What is up, everybody? Welcome to Jeff Needs Sports, a product of the Off the Ball Network. Tonight we got a good show. First and foremost, I hope everybody's enjoying their holiday season in whatever form that is, and everyone is healthy and having a good time and in a fairly good mood. Second of all, you're going to be in a better mood after this because again, I've got my partner in crime back tonight. I've got Dan Felton back. And we're going to talk about the NFL playoff race. Pretty excited about it. We did the midseason, then we did we did a quarter season, a midseason, and now this is about the home stretch. So it's going to be a fun show, and I want to thank everybody for watching, listening, and joining us on Twitter, Facebook, or wherever you're getting this. We appreciate it. So without further ado, Dan, how are you tonight?
I'm good, Jeff. Thanks for having me back again. This is our Q3 report, right? We're just making our way through the season one little bit at a time. I'm excited. This long season really throwing me for a loop now. It feels like it should be over, but no, we still got 3 more weeks to go.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I like this. This is one of my favorite ones because we actually honestly until last week when I put out my for anybody who doesn't know, I do the NFL Power Rankings for Off the Ball every week. This was the first week to where the basically the good teams and the bad teams separated at all. I mean, it's been, a mix every week, whether it's been upsets or bad losses or whatever, it's been kind of crazy. This was the first week to where I thought I'm not saying that we separated playoff teams, but I think we finally have maybe 10 teams that okay, they're not winning the Super Bowl.
Right.
For the first time, which is amazing. And we have 3 weeks left, and that's what we're here to do is look at the playoff stretch. Overall, it's been a entertaining season. I don't know how good of a season it's been. How do you feel about football? We talked about parity for years. The NFL has done everything they could to break up dynasties or to prevent dynasties, more or less. With even the scheduling, the drafting process, and all that. Just as a football fan, how do you feel about the product? Because everybody knows this year, are all the teams average or are all the teams competitive?
I think I really feel like it's been probably one of the more equal seasons they've had in a long time. I mean, the AFC is the most crammed conference I can remember in a long time. And maybe the 17 game schedule has sort of been a cause of that. And with, another COVID season has been, especially towards the end of the year now, it's sort of ravaging the league and all that. But the product has been entertaining. I don't know if the on-field product has been as good. I think the games have been better this year, a lot more competitive, a lot of late finishes. I mean, it feels like it's been so long, but I remember the first maybe 6-7 weeks of the season, almost every primetime game was a hell of a game to watch, down to the last minute, down to some sort of crazy ending. So I think the games have been better to watch, but the overall product, that the 60-minute product of each and individual game this year, I probably think is getting worse. I think the officiating is really questionable. I think the enforcement of certain rules, I think pass interference rules in the league have gotten just completely out of hand. This taunting thing that they've done, and then now they're just kind of not doing it. It's just, I think the rules have been really weird. The on-field product has been probably lower than it's been in the past, but overall the games in the league have been more exciting and even. So it's been a bit of a trade-off. It's not been fully good or bad, but I think there's something to be said on both sides of that.
Yeah, I think it's I think the really bad teams haven't been as bad as in the past. Honestly, when Houston or the Jets have had a few, good games, when they're playing good, they look like legitimate NFL football teams. They don't look that bad. Detroit has looked competitive all year.
Yeah, Detroit is a couple of bounces away from being a 4 or 5 win team, right?
Easily. Well, I mean, they're a 66-yard field goal away from another win over, a good team. But I watch every week. Last week was a really good example. The only good game I watched last week that I thought was a quality football on both sides and good teams and all that was the Packers-Ravens game. That's the one that stood out as far as man, that looked like a playoff game. That looked like both teams cared and all that. Not to say the other teams didn't look good, but that's the first game to where I'm just as a casual observer, wow, this is entertaining. This is high-level football. This is execution, as opposed to it just being close. The opposite of that, was the Cleveland game. That was just a nightmare to watch, and we struggled through it on Monday afternoon, and for whatever reason why. But it's that wound up being a really good. The last 5 minutes were entertaining.
Yeah,
but it was not a good game. I couldn't point to anything, even though I still think at this point in the year, the Browns have the best. I don't know how to say it. Like when they're the best blocking scheme maybe of any team in the league.
Sure.
Maybe them
Yeah.
them and the Indianapolis Colts, like just on screen passes and
Yeah.
and runs, especially cutbacks and stuff. Just really amazing execution. You know, both those teams are probably a quarterback play away from being great teams,
Right.
but I don't know. We'll probably get into that later, but
Of course.
yeah. So I kind of threw that curveball at you there, but just as I was thinking about it,
You just warmed me up.
I know. Well, I'm watching the games this weekend, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I've had about a 10-year discussion with some of my really good friends that love football too, and every
Yeah.
year I'm like, is the NFL, are the games close or are they good? And there's a difference there, and I think there's been a lot of close games this year that aren't that good.
That's exactly what I was saying. Is I think the games overall this year have been closer, which is exciting. I mean, it's been a great year to watch the red zone, but it hasn't been a
There
great
you
year
go.
to sit down and watch 60-minute football games. Because you're right. I mean, that Cleveland game again, bad football, but a lot of games are 55 minutes of really subpar football with a great 5-minute ending. But apart from that, most of the year there hasn't been a lot of really high quality full games being played.
And like I understand, we're in a new age of coaching here, but the coaching is also not added to it like this. I'm going to lead you right into this, like the analytics and everything.
Yeah.
But some of these games, the coaches are really stepping on it. I don't care like how much they wanted to, what everything said. Harbaugh going for 2 the last 2 weeks, in these games. The Pittsburgh game made a little more sense, and the play should have worked. Lamar kind of blew it. Against Green Bay, you just got a 3 and out. Aaron Rodgers, and you got a sack. And your quarterback is really starting to feel it. Huntley, had really warmed up, having a great game. And then to take that away, with an all or nothing, play, I thought it actually robbed like the game. I thought it robbed the viewers. It just, in my opinion. And these coaches, San Diego, or I keep calling them San Diego, Los Angeles Chargers they constantly go for it on 4th down and constantly don't get it. It's shot them in the foot all year. I know what the long-term numbers say do certain things, but you have to watch the game and you have to have the players have a feel for the game of this isn't the time, So I think
you're going to pull me into a rant. You're pulling me into a rant early on.
It's your first one of the night. I think the coaches are really stepping all over the game sometimes. We talked about, McVay sometimes, how, you're a Rams fan, and how sometimes he, I don't know, wants to be the smartest guy in the room or gets stubborn. Yep. And these coaches are stubborn on this, and then they go to the analytics and they're like, nope, it was the right thing to do. You can't question it. And you're like, well, I don't know. I've watched a lot of games. Was it? It's just, I think the coaches and the officiating have kind of stepped on a lot of these games this year.
I agree. I mean, the Baltimore Ravens are a few analytics decisions away from being a 10-win team right now. And right now they're on the outside of the bubble. I mean, one thing I noticed from that Baltimore Green Bay game, it wasn't just the 2-point conversion at the end of the game. I mean, they had the ball on the 3-yard line in the first quarter. They go for it. They get stuffed. They get no points. All these
That's
coaches
the one that actually bothered me more than the 2-pointer, by the way.
There was one last night with the Rams as well. The Rams were up 3-0, can't score, can't move the ball. Seattle's playing good defense. And right before the end of the first half, they've got, we've got a kicker who's missed 1 field goal all year, who's automatic. You're in a 3-0 game. The flow of the game is clearly going to be slow and probably a grinder of a game. And they decide to go for it on 4th and 2 or something at like the 30-yard line. I'm like, just kick it and go to the half up 6-0. They get stopped, and then Seattle almost scores before the half or kicks a field goal to tie at the half or something. Like, it's just the analytics have seemed to have taken away from the philosophy of a football game, which is that it is a 60-minute game and that the flow of the game changes constantly. And however it's going at one point in the game is not how it's going to be going later. And you're right. A lot of these guys are just boiling it down to the number says this. Well, then that's what I'm doing. And Harbaugh's, he was cutting edge. And I think he's cut the edge right off now. Like, he is beyond any sort of sensible coaching now to the point where it's just, I'm going for it every time. There's no intuition. What's the point of being a coach if your decisions are made by a spreadsheet, right? Your job is supposed to interpret the game. You're supposed to feel the flow of the game, understand how your team's playing, how the other team's playing. And also, again, it's a 60-minute game. I mean, you kick a field goal last night, or during the Ravens-Packers game, you kick a field goal from the 3. It sucks. But you had 3 other chances to get in there and you didn't get it. Get a few points and move on. It's a long game. what do? They end up losing on a 2-point conversion like that. But I think it's taking something out of the sport. I know analytics people across sports swear that it's the only way to do it. I firmly disagree. I think there's a blend and a balance to be found, and I don't think any of these guys this year have shown any sort of intuitiveness with the way they apply these analytics.
Okay, so let me run some of, like a theory, not a theory of mine. I mean, this is,
Sure.
I guess, a theory is. So another thing with analytics is what analytics is you're taking years and years of data, and
you're going to say exactly what I wanted to say. And I know you're saying
you're using that to, make decisions, or whatever. That's fine. But here's the thing: for years and years and years, coaches coached a certain way, so all the data is going to represent that. But if they keep coaching like this now, and it's probably going to take, we'll say, 10 years, all the data is going to be heavily against your manipulation. You're changing the data as you go on. This isn't 1,000 years of data. This is just the football. What are we at? 75 years of football or whatever. You're changing the data. You're making the data as you go.
The use of the data changes the nature of the data that you're referring to, and you're right. That's exactly every time. I'm amazed that you have the same exact thought that I had all weekend, which was exactly that. You guys are now applying a principle that was done in natural settings, and then turning into like an artificial decision making process. But therefore, you're not using this data in the same situation that it came from. So I just don't understand it. It's exactly that. I'd be interested in seeing the success rates of a lot of these 2-point conversions and fourth downs at the end of the year compared to years past, because it really feels like they're getting worse at converting them too, because defenses are already now gearing into short yardage situational football.
Yeah, it's a 4 down. It's a 4 down. Yeah, it's a 4 down game now, which is, that and sometimes I don't mind it, but I'll go the opposite way, which lo and behold, I've actually got a possible playoff team to root for. So I finally can watch the Dolphins with more intent than I have in a while, which is kind of awesome. So I'm watching the other day. This is exactly the situation that the Ravens were in, or what you're talking about, is the Dolphins get down to the Jets, and then it's one of these games that you look and you're like, this is one of those, like, the underdog. It's just set in stone. For whatever reason, they can't get out of their own way. Dolphins drive down. They stall on a drive. I believe they were down 10 at the time, but it felt like they were down 20. But all they do, they simply kick their field goal. They take their 3 points and give lo and behold, they score a late touchdown. They take the lead and they win a close game. Rather, they just played it by like common sense. Like, no, get some points. Just keep accruing points. I've always said that. I mean, if an NFL team really looks at it, if you kick a field goal every drive, you win half your games. Like, it's not that complicated. Just you keep accruing points, and and
it changes. It's making a decision in the moment. It's like long-term investing, right? I mean, you could gamble your money away if you want, or you could put it and let it grow. Kick a field goal, let your team get some momentum. Not only that, the analytics doesn't, or at least it doesn't seem like coaches are using this side of the analytics, but they don't seem to ever be paying attention to how much a game swings the other way when you don't get it. Like, how much, giving a team the ball at the 35-yard line without after not giving up any points, how much that swings the momentum back the other way. The use of the analytics and the failure in those situations is creating flow situations, things that aren't going to be dissected by analytics and numbers, things that change the flow of the game. And I don't think coaches have come around to that realization yet, that it's a legitimate gamble that there is an actual downside to. They seem to be so focused on the potential payoff that they've completely ignored the opposite side of it. Not that I believe in scared coaching all the time, but it's a long football game. And you're right. Like that Dolphins game, you got those 3 points earlier. So at the end of the game, the situation for a tie or a win is completely different than it would have been had you gotten nothing. Right.
Yep. And you don't have dejected players. You don't, and I know everybody tells me, oh no, all the Ravens wanted to go for it. Well, they're players. They're not going to, they're not going to stand up and say, no, that's ridiculous. I sometimes think that, there is a mentality. I think you said it best. What's the coach there for then? If it's not about reading the room and the energy.
And also, I mean, who gives a shit what the players want half the time? You're the head coach. Your job is to make the decision that's best for them throughout the course of a game.
If you ask the defense, they want to blitz every play. Like, should you do that? Like,
Yeah, exactly. You're
Yeah,
the leader for a reason. You're supposed to be the
yeah,
decision maker. Nobody. If Bill Belichick kicks the field goal, his players aren't going to go, "Well, we wanted to go for it." No, they're
yeah.
gonna. They know they respect the leadership and the decision making at the top. But I don't know.
Yeah, and another one that gets me is, I saw it a lot this weekend. You have a bad team and they're playing, well, whoever they're playing, but especially if they're playing a
Right.
much better team, it's always like, oh, they got nothing to lose. Here's what I don't like about that: you spend all
Yeah.
training camp, you spend all your OTAs, you spend every practice, and everything is based on, you know, common, like how a football game is supposed to play out, like
Yeah.
situational football. Well, when you have these teams that like go for broke and then they get down, 17 points or whatever because all they, whatever, it didn't matter. Well, now you've got a defense that is,
Mm.
that's not how you train your defense. Like nobody
Yeah.
coaches defense like, okay, we're going to be down 17 in the second. And then it's totally different. So I don't think that's fair to like your defense or your offense,
Mm.
when you don't play it by the numbers, even when you're the bad team. To me, it feels like that's when you should play it as straightforward as possible. That's how you steal these wins, and that's why I think
Yeah.
that like like Baltimore, put the pressure on Green Bay to go score. You don't know they won't make a mistake. Like give them a chance to
Yeah.
fumble. Whatever. If you get beat, you get beat.
Yeah. What if you win the coin toss? You guys have been scoring touchdowns left, right, and center. You
Yeah,
go to overtime.
you're playing great. You can run time off the clock. I mean,
Sure,
you
sure.
just
It's not a lot of faith in their own defenses anymore. There's a lot of this whole.
yeah.
I mean, I got to go for like the Ravens keep doing that where they're like, I have to go for the win because there's no chance we're gonna lose. We're gonna, we can't win otherwise unless we get this 2-point conversion. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's people who disagree with me thoroughly. It's just,
I'm convinced. Oh no, I
there's
believe
got to
me.
be a balance. There's got to be some sort of. I think the
You
pendulum
got to have a feel for
so
it.
far to analytics that it's like it needs to kind. There's got to be someone who comes back and knows when to go. All right, screw the spreadsheets, man. I don't need it. Like,
Yeah,
not today.
yeah. No, but so that's a couple things I've noticed this year. But overall, it's been well, first and foremost. I'm glad we got a season. I'm glad fans get to go. I know it's
Yes.
getting a little
Yeah.
crazy right now, and the most important thing is even football players that are missing games and stuff, they aren't getting super sick, which is good. So all in
Yeah.
all, like the fact that we have football and we have fans in the stands, and it's been a pretty regular
We'd have to
schedule.
hope that this
I'm
is
happy with that.
probably that next, hopefully in general, but next year that we're back to something more consistent,
Yeah.
and it was this worry of the end of the year, like it is right now, turning into a bit of a nightmare with another wave, and that's a society thing as a whole. But you'd hope that it's been better this year, and that this is going to be the last sort of headache we got to get through before maybe
Yeah.
next year we can have a full normal season.
So I'll run a question by you. A guy asked me the other day. We were at a party
Sure.
and kind of BSing about it. And it was a great question that I hadn't even thought about this really, and I hadn't had it asked to me. But he asked me, and I'm like, wow, I like this topic. So, somebody asked me, like, we're not, this is not about having a whole conversation about the COVID virus and all that. This is about, do you feel that we'll say 10, 20 years from now, we're hoping that this was only a 1 or 2 year thing, and that everything, honestly, we won't even say normal. We'll just say, like you said, consistent. Do you feel that there's going to be a time to where there's going to be an era of football or sports in general that is going to be like tagged as, they'll probably call it the COVID era or something like that? I hadn't really thought about that, but then I'm like, I mean, it does, it has affected 2 seasons severely.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, but also, I don't know. The only thing that I think was been really, truly affected, I mean, the NFL, not so much because they've still more or less pulled off a couple of seasons in a row. And especially in a 17-game season, I know it's hectic and all that, and teams are missing players and all that, but over a 17-game season, probably the 14 best teams, or the 14 teams that should make the playoffs, will make the playoffs over the course. The law of averages, will eventually, COVID or not. I think the NBA and the NHL having those disrupted seasons where they were gone for 5 months and then played in bubbles and all that stuff, that might be something that exists sort of in its own little sphere. Those seasons? But even that was only 1 year, and that they came right back to being pretty much normal. Now, I don't think it's affected sports to the level of like the world wars, like the World War II era, where they were just like, we just didn't play sports for 4 years,
But that isn't, I'm glad that's an example I brought up, to where there's like 5 years of sports there that it's like,
right,
everything during that time was weird. Like,
there's a big gap in the history book, right? So, I mean, bigger fish to fry at that point, but
yeah, I just wondered. He said that to me, and I'm like, wow, I don't know. I guess we don't know what's going to happen in the playoffs.
Yeah.
You know, if a really important player has to sit out, then it's going to be a conversation. But you know, I hadn't thought about it either. I'm like, no, I think it'll be all right. And then I started thinking about it. And I'm like, well, I don't know if you have, let's say there is another year of just this kind of disruptions. You know, it's no different than injuries, essentially. Like if a guy's missing for a game, that's a big deal. Then you got to, like, you know, Cleveland Browns, you know, miss a lot of players. Then they have a short week. And then the team they play has a weird short week. Like if it happened without something with a reason that we're not used to, like say a weather event or something like that, we would really be like, wow, that's a big deal, like to move games and stuff. You know, college football is already starting to, like, there's already teams that aren't going to play bowl games. First time I heard that today, there's a team. So, I mean, it's weird. And again, nobody's getting really sick or anything. So, or I wouldn't even be talking about this. I'm saying as far as on the teams, not in the world. You know, that's the important thing. So I wouldn't even be having a conversation if they had 12 players in the hospital or something.
And again, we hope that that's the way it goes.
I'll live with that. Yeah, if I have
the endemic
weird
phase, you know,
if I have a weird NFL season and nobody gets super sick, I'm down for that. So
and if it just becomes, you know, if it becomes a regular thing that we deal with, and you know, the worst it gets is contagious but not deadly, then it's probably going to be something more not normal, but a consistent new normal, I guess, and we'll move on with that. It hasn't overthrown seasons enough yet, I think, to really be like
to really label it. I don't think so either, but
there'll be some good documentaries about it for sure. But
I think the college football season is going to get really interesting in the next 4 or 5 days. But we'll see. This is a college football show, though, as much as I love it. But check back with Jeff News Sports, where we don't college football. So speaking of injuries,
I have to come on a college show so I can rant about finally feeling good as a Miami fan again. So
wow, there are some. You know what? We will do that. We will do
put that in the back burner.
Talk about
put on the back burner.
Yeah, there's some definite energy flowing around down there.
Absolutely,
with all this stuff with the transfer portal, it's wild. College football is wild right now, and I'm all for it.
Sorry, I cut off your segue to the next part of the show, though.
No. I like that. So what we were saying, we were talking about NFL injuries. So the last time we were on, we got into some discussion. So you, on your podcast, Assorted Goods, you did an NFL episode. And I really enjoyed it. Everybody go check out Dan's show, Assorted Goods podcast. It's really good, scripted, fine-tuned stuff that you guys will really like. But he did an episode on, NFL head trauma and, the difference in how they handled the race issues and all that entailed it. So, I listened to it. It was great. I was proud, that you did it. Well, then I had to wonder, this past weekend, we had a barrage of really, really scary looking head injuries. I mean, really, really, Thursday night, the kid from Los Angeles went out with no contact. I mean, no human contact, player contact. He went out, bumped. He said Bridgewater's was scary. I mean, they had to do a sternum rub to wake this guy up. My wife's like, she's a nurse, and she goes, "Whoa, that's something you do when somebody is like really, really out." A couple other guys. I think there was a jet carted off in the Miami game. Like, it was one of these, and I'm thinking, like, so I know you do a lot of research for your show. You did a great show on it, and then I was just kind of wanting to pick your brain of, like, when you were watching these and you were seeing these things, how did that line up with what you now, like, know and have learned, from looking at this stuff in the NFL?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the older I get, the more my relationship with the National Football League is a lot more complicated, I think. And the head injuries thing is something that I mean, they had their moment in the league of, about 8-9 years ago when the stories started to come out and all that, but they've done a really, I don't know what the right words to use, remarkable job of pretty much pretending like that was a quick thing that has been fixed and moved on from. The reality about football is that it is simply a very dangerous sport to play in any measure whatsoever, because it's not guys hitting each other with their heads that does it. It's 1,000 micro car accidents a year that erode your brain. And I mean, the big injuries certainly are worth the discussion because they draw so much attention. And the Donald Parham one was, I mean, a bad look for the league pretty much in every possible way. But as you know, Jeff, and for fans, the news cycle of sports moves so fast and is such a content machine that it doesn't even make a blip when it happens. I mean, that was pretty horrible.
It was horrifying
to watch. And then it was absolutely brutally mismanaged by whoever the producer on Fox was running that broadcast, to not immediately cut away with the cameraman getting in his face while he was unconscious, to not cut to another camera immediately, realizing what was happening. Joe Buck made a fucking disgrace of himself again, which the way that the commentators speak about concussions, the way they treat it nonchalantly, I think the last few weeks have made me realize, after researching everything for that episode, and where I am now, is the league really has not made any advances whatsoever. They've done their best to do what most major corporations do in a some sort of liability health crisis, which is go to court, battle it out, lose, make a huge settlement and pay a bunch of money, and then try your best to sweep the whole thing under the rug and never talk about it again. And they've tried really hard, and it's worked really well. It really has. But I think the injuries like Parham's and Teddy Bridgewater's are just this reminder again that it hasn't gone anywhere, and they're far from reaching the end of the road in terms of making the game safe enough to play at that level. And the reality may be is that football just may not be possible, really.
Yeah, it's really not, because we saw, especially like you say, Parham and Bridgewater, it wasn't because of a hit they took, it was because of and it wasn't. I mean, the Parham one was really scary. Like that's
it looked harmless.
Yeah, you assume that's a product of time, like you're talking about. And then they when you touch on the network thing, what I guess they tried to do is when they show him reaching his hands up, they love to show that. Like I never got this about the when a guy has a neck or a head injury, they put him on a stretcher, they strap him down, which, like, in any situation in the real world, if that happens to you, that's one of the scariest moments of your life.
Yeah.
They can't move the guy. Sometimes they can't even take their helmet off, but he puts his hands up and everybody's like, oh, okay. Oh man, that was a close one.
Oh yeah. Like, the classic, it's everything's fine because I put my thumb up.
Everything's fine. I'm like, they're if you're carrying me out of work on a backboard, I'm not fine. You know what I mean? I'm not saying I won't be, but I don't understand why it's always like, and that's what I think that when you're talking about Fox, they really thought that that's what they were going to do. It was like, oh, he's got his hands up, it's going to be fine. Then they find out that, I forget the medical term for it, but the reason his hands were up or not, it's basically like I don't even want to get into like mismanage the medical part of it. It's not good. It's a more of a reaction to,
it's his brain has been
injured,
right? That's
his brain injury.
And the fact that the broadcast didn't really. I mean, what does he say afterwards? Joe Buck was on the broadcast going, "Oh, it must have been too cold or something." Like. I mean, I still don't know how to adequately respond to him saying.
And guess what? It didn't matter. Like nobody cared. Yeah. Nobody said anything.
Nobody cares.
These guys could do whatever they want.
He'll be back, and that guy will play again. And they'll go, look, he's totally fine. But it's again, it's brain injuries are not about what it does to you necessarily in the moment, which it can be horrible. And high school level and college level things happen, but it's what it does to you 20 years down the road. It's what it's going to do to these guys in their late 30s, mid 40s and stuff like that. So researching the concussion subject was tough because, I played football growing up a lot, and I was a smaller guy. I took a lot of hits to the head when I was playing that. Looking back, I don't know how to really wrap my head around it. So no pun intended, but it's concerning, right? Like it's concerning for anybody who's played the sport, it's certainly learning about it certainly made me think about my own playing days. And I wonder if other people feel the same way, but it's something that I wish that the league had not so actively played a role in stopping research into the subject and stopping talking about it, because it's bad for their brand, right? It's bad for business, but it's unfortunate that they could have led the way in scientific research on the subject and actually making the game safer. And instead, they've sort of tried to muddy the waters and brush it under the rug. So, it's again, I'm as guilty as any. I can be as critical as the league as I want, and then also I'm going to sit back down on Sunday and watch, listen to Scott Hansen guide me through 7 hours of commercial-free football from 1 to 8.
Yep. I know that. Yeah, we're all guilty of it. I mean, I shouldn't say guilty. You don't have to be guilty of it. It's a
Oh, it's
product.
not our fault. I mean,
It's a product they put out there. But
sure.
we all do it. But I thought a lot about that. Like, I listened to your episode. I'm just like you, especially as I get older, and then your kids get older, and then one of these days I have grandkids on the way, and you really start thinking about, man, if that was my kid, I don't, it's a whole worth it situation, and it's funny because the conversation we're having right now sounds dated. People are going to be like, in their mind, they're gonna be like, "Oh, we've already
talked about this.
We've already done this. Like, we've already done this. This isn't what's here now." But it's not true. Like, people still have brains. People are still getting hurt, and I do think that some of the strides in football itself and techniques and stuff have gotten better. As far as like the way football's played, just from watching high school and college and everything. But again, I won't say the cover up, but just it's always bearing the lead. The NFL does it with everything. You said you had so many. Again, I'll do yourself a favor. Everybody go listen to the Assorted Goods podcast, the episode on this. There's so much good information and everything that we don't have near the time to cover. So, but I did appreciate you doing that. So, all right. So we'll get on to what we're here to do. We're going to talk about some football. After we just killed the NFL, basically said how much we hate it. Let's talk football.
Let's just get back to the business then, I guess. Yeah.
So what we're going to kind of do here is we're going to look at the divisions, and then just briefly or not briefly, however strongly we feel about it, kind of go through like, how we think they're going to turn out. I mean, we're down to 3 games. Everybody's played 14, I believe. We're good with that. So we're going to I'm going to wheel over here and turn off this heater.
I was going to say the weird bye weeks in this season now. Like I for anybody who plays fantasy football this year, the fact that there were bye weeks up until like the last week of the fantasy season was just a killer. Absolute killer. I don't know who wants a week 14 bye, but I mean, I think they should go back to the 5 to 12 range like they used to, and just kind of keep it there, because this week 14.
I do. Well, there were some early ones too that I didn't like. I think they started like week 4. I swear, maybe week 5. Like, it felt like some teams. I mean, their bye was a season ago.
Yeah, I imagine there's a TV thing about it. I still think the league should go down to like 4 weeks right in the middle of the season. They should just do 8 teams a week for 4 weeks.
Just get it done. Yeah.
Yeah. And that way everyone's kind of got a mid-season sort of week off instead of like week 5, and then you got another 12 weeks.
Well, I've always thought that they could work it out, because everybody everybody plays a Thursday game. It feels like there's a way you could connect some of that too. But it's been kind of weird. But now we're down. Everybody's got 3 games left, and we know almost nothing. So I am going to bring up the divisions here. We're going to start, we'll go in order. We're going to start with the AFC, start with the AFC East, and there they are. If you're watching, you can see them with me and Dan. We'll kind of scroll through them here. So let's just talk about the AFC East. You got the Patriots at 9-5 at the top. You got the Bills, who were a strong Super Bowl contender at the beginning of the season, at 8-6, 1 game back. And then you got the Dolphins, who have won 6 games in a row. To put it in perspective, the Dolphins net points are -27 still, and they're in the playoff. And then you got the Jets, who are obviously out of the division right now at 3-11. So AFC East, it's going to come down to it. I know New England and the Bills play again. I'm not going to bring up everybody's schedule, but basically, who's going to win, man? Who's going to win this division?
The one thing I love every time I come on the show is the only time that I ever look at the standings and see the point differential, and throughout the season, I like reacting to that sort of the moment. The Patriots and the Bills with the 2 biggest point differentials in the whole league.
And you wouldn't guess that by the Bills. It feels like the Bills have had a terrible season, and nothing's working, and they got a huge point differential.
Yeah, both of them have seemingly had the same thing throughout the year, which is they've had a few each huge wins where they've just blown a few teams out, and then they've had a lot of much closer losses. But I'm not betting against Belichick anymore. I've seen his whole career with New England, and I've learned my lesson by now. I think he, first of all, he still owns the Bills. And from what I can tell, it looks like they still have maybe the easiest schedule. From what I can see, they play the Bills, and then they go Jaguars, Dolphins to end the year. The Dolphins game might be a little bit tricky, but I think the game this week is going to decide the division, obviously, and I think the Patriots will handle the Bills. They're at home. The Patriots get the game at home. They'll have a 2-game lead with 2 games to go against Jacksonville and Miami, and all they have to do is win one of those 2. So I think the Patriots will make out with it. I think they'll be fine. God, Mac Jones just keeps playing so well, and their defense is the best scoring defense in the NFL. Hard to bet against that, really. The Bills are still wildly inconsistent. They still don't really have much of a run game. And they're still sort of playing the same football they played for a few years. They don't really look like they've grown much as an offense over the years. So I'm not confident, but they're a talent-heavy team. They could easily upset somebody on the road in the playoffs, I still think.
I think we'll get into it when we talk wild cards. I'm picking the Patriots, and the main reason I am is the Patriots defense is just set up to stop a one-dimensional team like the Bills. We saw it in the windy game. I'd like to see that game played a few weeks ago without 50-mile-an-hour winds. But hey, that's the stadium.
You might get it this week, right? You might get it this week.
And I personally think the Bills would rather go on the road. I think they're built. If they can sneak into. Who knows what the matchup would be, but there's not a lot of warm weather. But say they could sneak into the Indianapolis Dome or something. I think they become.
You get Buffalo on the road against, say, Cincinnati in the first round of the playoffs. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm probably not betting on Cincinnati in that game. They're a tough out for whoever draws in the first round and gets them is going to be really not happy with that first game. That's not an easy out by any stretch.
Okay, so you brought up Cincinnati. Let's move on to the AFC North. This division, I don't know if it's good, bad. I have no idea what's going to happen. It's Bengals are at the top at 8-6, but the Browns are at the bottom at 7-7. I mean, this division's essentially tied. The Ravens have really let it go in the last few weeks. They had a bit of a hold on it. They're just injuries have killed them.
Yeah.
Those tough losses have killed them. Their conference, it's their conference schedules, whatever. So they're sitting in second place, but man, it doesn't feel like it. So I don't even know. I think the Browns have the Packers this week, so I'm chalking that up as a loss. I don't see how they can rebound off. That Tuesday, that Monday afternoon game, and then go to Green Bay. I don't see that. So I don't think the Browns can do it. But then I'm like, man, I don't know. I think the Bengals are the healthiest and best team. So I'm going to go. I think the Bengals win this division only because that tie from the Steelers maybe comes back to haunt them. I think the Ravens are. I think the Ravens are in big trouble. They don't have, so I'm going with the Bengals.
I got to agree with you. And you're right. The schedules for all 4 teams, because this is the one division I really wanted to look at before we started the show today. And I mean, Cincinnati gets Baltimore this week. That's probably the biggest game for them, obviously, of the year so far. There's a lot of divisional games across all 4 teams. They're basically all playing each other. So they're going to sort themselves out, but they're non-divisional games that they play out of these last 3. Cincinnati gets the Chiefs, which obviously that's a hugely tough draw. The Ravens get the Rams, which tough draw again. Pittsburgh gets the Chiefs on the road, which is a tough draw. And the Bengals get the Packers this week on the road. So they're basically sorting it out amongst themselves, but when they aren't in these last 3 weeks, they're all going into really, really difficult scenarios. I mean, the winner of this division easily is probably going to be at best 10-7. I don't see any of them running the table and going.
I think one more win is what everybody like. I think that'll be. I think 9-7 wins this division.
Someone's got to win the division games that they're playing, though, and that's the thing. They've all played 4 division games, which means they've all got 2 more division games in their last 3. That's kind of how the league's set up, right? Even the Rams are playing.
Great decision by the league. One of the few things the NFL has done right in the last 20 years is
paying off.
Is fix that late season stuff. I mean, the Bengals are a pretty good team. They fought one out the other day, but
they're a Jekyll and Hyde team, though. They either play really good football or they play just
or they
awful.
Just get whooped. Yeah, I don't think the Browns can. I don't know, but they're what they I say that and they just beat the snot out of the Bengals like 2 weeks ago. I have no idea. Pittsburgh just beat the Titans and we're acting like. They have no chance.
And last time I was on this show, I think was after the Titans kicked the crap out of the Rams. So of course, now I don't know what I got nothing to say now. I can't figure it out.
So I'm going to go with the Bengals, but I have zero faith in that.
I'll agree with you, but I would watch out for the Ravens. I mean, they may have already blown their chance with these
It
two
stinks
back-to-back
because
games, but
the best Ravens team was what lost to Green Bay. I hate that for them because that they finally looked like their defense kind of figured it out. Offense looked good with Huntley, and then they don't win the game. It's like, ugh, you just you give those away. You just can't get those back. So
yeah.
This is we'll go into the AFC South now. This is an interesting division. Truthfully, I this is probably one of my least liked divisions in football. I don't care about these teams. I don't enjoy watching these teams. I don't generally root for them in the playoffs. They're just kind of like on this. They're a little like the NFC East to me, to where it feels like these teams are always just playing each other. You know what I mean? Like, you ever notice it feels like Philadelphia, Washington play 6 games a year. Like,
so the Giants are always playing the Cowboys.
I think the Titans and Colts play 8 times a year. I swear, like it just means nothing to me. But I've got the Colts, ranked. I think my rankings this week, they're up to 6. They've just had a really good run. You can see they're 4-1 in the last 5, had a really good run. The Titans still lead the division at 9-5. But this Titans team, just like you said, they stomped the Rams. They look really good, and then they just look average, and they looked pathetic against Pittsburgh the other day. I mean, they couldn't muster up any offense. This whole as soon as Julio gets there, it's going to be the best offense we ever seen. It's going to be freaking Tecmo Bowl stuff. I tried to warn everybody. It's really been a failure. Obviously Henry goes out in the middle of the season and hurts them, but they just don't look like they can score points when they have to.
Well, they just don't have a passing game. I mean, this is Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill has been a great quarterback since he got there. I mean, the Titans are probably hard pressed to find anybody who could have played as well as he has for them for the last few years. But the problem is with Ryan Tannehill, as it turns out, is he is a really underwhelming quarterback when his offense is struggling, and that's the problem, is they can't rely on him to win the game with his arm. He's a winner of a quarterback, but he's not a game-changing quarterback in the pass game. They just can't find an identity. Last time I was on the show, I think I said after their injury, they've got a chance to find an identity without Derrick Henry, and they haven't. I thought they maybe did, but that Rams game, the Rams kind of gave them a lot of their points, and their offense really wasn't very good outside of the 14 points that were handed by the Rams offense. They could easily be 8-6. They could easily be 7-7. They're a much more average team than they lead on. I would also like to pat myself on the back, because I think the first time I was on your show after week 4, when the Colts were 0-4 or something, I think I said to you, by the end of this year, the Colts are going to be right back in it, and you're going to see. And they are a team that has found their identity and actually has sort of built around who is the next star running back in this league, and Jonathan Taylor, and Carson Wentz doesn't get asked to do a lot, but he does enough to win. They're sort of built like the Niners are. So I think the Titans are underwhelming, and they're going to stay back there. I easily would say I think the Colts are going to make me look really smart and win that division before the end of the year.
I do too. I think Tennessee loses to the 49ers this week, who I really like right now. We'll talk about them here in a few minutes. No offense, but I really like the 49ers.
I know. I have to give the credit too.
But I think the Colts are going to win this division, and I think this is a team that would love to play at home. Hopefully, running back, I keep telling everybody's Jonathan Taylor MVP. I'm like, I need to see a running back finish the season first, because we've seen this so many times, and Derrick Henry's been the only one in the the recent years that has went into the playoffs as a healthy running back. Tampa Bay just lost Fournette, who has been really good for him this year. McCaffrey's barely played. Ezekiel Elliott is up and down. Pollard's out for Dallas. Like, these running backs just aren't there when the playoffs start. So I need to see Taylor finish the season healthy.
Let me just ask you this. Let me just ask you this about Indianapolis. Did you ever imagine at any point in the season they would be the highest scoring team in the AFC?
No.
Yeah, but they are.
No,
They've scored more points. They scored more points than the Chiefs. This grinded out. Carson Wentz is leading the highest scoring offense in the AFC.
It doesn't make any sense, does it?
I know he's not leading. I know he's not leading it, but still.
Right. Hey, that's who's at quarterback. But their defense is I really like their defense. I like how they play. Yeah. And it just if we're gonna, again, we just gave all this credit to New England, like Belichick and they look good, and I believe all that. Indianapolis just beat them pretty solidly.
Pretty handedly.
So if
maybe
I believe
maybe
New England's good, then I got
serious.
to believe Indianapolis is really good.
I agree, and I think serious consideration. And the thing about the Titans and the Colts this year is the difference in the head coaches. Really, I think Vrabel is a guy who seems to get his team prepared for about 50% of the games they play, where Frank Reich is a guy who seemingly inspires his team to not get down by like an 0-4 start or however bad they started this year. But that's impressive. I think if the Colts finish with 10 win 2 or 3 of these last games, 10 or 11 wins, I got to tell you, Frank Reich deserves a Coach of the Year look. Turning a team around from that bad of a start, I think is a testament to a great coach, but also a testament to what the 17-game schedule has done, which is that for teams to start 0-4 now, we were saying before, one extra game feels like almost a month of football extra. It feels like a longer season. You really have a chance to turn it around.
And this division's weird. I mean, you got the two. Yeah, you got Houston and Jacksonville at the bottom, who are just dreadful.
Awful.
A weird story. There's not even anything to talk about. Is that Deshaun Watson has neither had anything come up on the personal side, and he hasn't played. What a weird story that is. For Houston.
Two of the worst offenses in football by
just dreadful. Jacksonville's just terrible in every facet of the game. Then with all they're firing coaches, and it's just been a mess. Once again, this division, I just don't care enough to care about it. But,
then let's move on to the next.
Let's move on. I'm picking Indianapolis. I think they're a really good team. And I'll stick.
Do we need to touch on the Chiefs real quick and acknowledge the fact that they
yes, we
Danny
do.
Green, they are who we thought they were.
They are exactly. They were dead and buried.
Yeah,
we saw this with the old New England teams maybe 10 years ago. I remember actually a game New England played against the Chiefs. This was probably with Alex Smith's Chiefs.
Is when Kareem Hunt went off for 200
destroyed, and they were like, time for Brady to move over. Is this Hoyer's? I think it was Hoyer. It's Hoyer's team now. Blah 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 blah. Next thing you know, I think New England won at least 2 Super Bowls after that. I'm not sure.
Yeah. How many times they were told that it was over and Brady was done and washed and all that stuff. But Jeff, any sports talking person on planet Earth, whoever writes off a team with a great quarterback and a great coach, I don't know what you're doing. You should take up a science show or something, because you cannot bet against a team that's got a great coach and a great quarterback over the course of a season. And also, again, a pretty good team, a very talented team. They're not the Seahawks, they've got a good roster.
They're kind of figuring it out. I think Mahomes has learned a lot this season. I think a lot of the criticism was true. I watch a lot of tape of him to try and figure out what I'm missing with Mahomes, and he was scattered out of the pocket and he was throwing balls up in the air, but he kind of figured it out. He's kind of dialed in. And, they've won 7 in a row. They look good. Kelsey looks like I was starting to think he was missing a step, and now that seems back. Tyreek Hill's figuring it out. This team's really good. Again, you just brought up, you got a good quarterback, you got a good coaching staff. They can score. Defense is a little better. Nobody wants to play them. No. So I think the Chargers just they've missed their chances. It was just an overtime. I mean, let's be honest. We're an overtime away that we're talking about the Chargers and Chiefs being tied. So it's not
and not just that. Over the course of the year, how bad the Chargers defense has been over the course of the year is alarming. I mean, that is essentially why they hired Brandon Staley. He's got the #1 defense with the Rams last year. They basically said to him, we got a good quarterback, we got offensive weapons, we've got a lot of talent on our defense. You're the guy who's got to turn the defense into a dominating force and let the quarterback simply do what he needs to do to win the game. And Herbert's a hell of a quarterback, but how bad their defense has been over the course of the year is concerning, I think, when you brought somebody in specifically to turn that side of the ball into something really good. And he hasn't done it so far.
And the thing about the Chargers, it feels like when they start to lose, it just goes. I'm not saying it's just been one of those teams to where when it starts looking bad, okay, it's over. But then when they look really good, they've beat some teams soundly. It's just what we talked about. It's this year's NFL. I think the Chiefs. I'm sure the Chiefs win this division. I don't think they're unstoppable, but I think they're a really good team, and they can absolutely win it.
Could be some good games in the playoffs with them.
Yeah,
think
we'll
they'll
talk
get into
about the
some interesting ones.
we'll talk about the wild card picture
Yeah,
here in a minute. NFC East, this is Cowboys. They might
yeah,
have even clinched last night. I don't even know, if they haven't. But regardless, they're 10-4. The 3
yeah,
games ahead of Philadelphia. Surprise Philadelphia team. I like this Philadelphia team just because I
yeah.
like teams that just keep playing like professionals and
Mhm.
building wins. And all of a sudden you look down and you're like, well, they got set. They're 7-7. They're
Yeah,
7-7, just like they've won one less game than the Buffalo Bills and teams that we
yeah.
expected, to win Super Bowls. I love the way they fought through it, but the division's going to Dallas here
They are
without a doubt.
trending up. I think the way the Eagles are sort of pointed straight in the upwards
Oh yeah.
direction next year. Who knows? You can always be wrong, and I often am. But next year, I would think that they look like a team that's headed in the right direction. I have to imagine for Eagles fans, they've probably warmed up to Nick Sirianni now and Jalen Hurts and all that.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to have built the offense around them and all that. I think once you get Devontae Smith next year with another year under his belt, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they press the Cowboys next year for that division. They do look like a team that's got something working, sort of as an organization.
And they're one of these weird, these teams too. And no, we probably don't bring this up enough in the NFL, but a lot of it is. I keep saying this about the NFL. It's who you play, when you play them, how healthy they are. Like I look at the Dolphins. They've had a great run. They've won 6 in a row. They're on fire. They got a chance to make playoffs, and they haven't beat a good quarterback in 6 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like outside of Lamar Jackson, they destroyed the Ravens. That was a great win. Everybody else has been, either rookies or backups or things like that. But that's how you compile victories in the NFL. The Eagles have done a little bit of that. They beat the teams they should, but that's all you got to do in the NFL. And then you got to figure out how to steal a couple games. And that's what the Eagles have done. We'll talk a little more about them, but I think we all think that Dallas is winning that division.
Yeah,
the
NFC is far less excitement in the NFC divisions. That's for sure.
Here's another. This division's won. We're going to the NFC North. The Packers have clinched division. They look really good right now. I've got them ranked number 1. I feel that they'll finish the season in my rankings as the best team. They're pretty healthy right now. Rodgers is playing good. It looks like they've got a plan. This is a team that can play anywhere in any element, which is gigantic. They can beat you on turf and they can beat you in the snow. It's what I've always liked about the Aaron Rodgers teams. He's been kind of a knucklehead this year, but it's not affected anything on the football field as of yet.
Except for that weird week 1 game where he threw the game away, I still say so.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Except when he threw.
I stick by my conspiracy theory. I stick by it. So, but they're running away with it pretty much. The Vikings. Yeah. What do you think about the Vikings? Because I'm curious your thoughts on this. Are the Vikings in that head coaching purgatory where the guy clearly isn't that good of a coach, but they're stuck?
He's the Marvin Lewis, like Cincinnati Bengals.
It's a little bit like the Jeff Fisher thing, right? Like he's going to win 8 games. That's another one. It's really hard to fire him, but they're going to have to make a decision on Zimmer soon. I think he's
which is funny because he came from the Bengals, who were coached by Marvin Lewis, who was the all-time they're getting by. So I think he's got to go. Nothing against Zimmer. It doesn't feel like he's got a hold. This team, I asked last night on Twitter as I'm watching, because I'm watching them play this week, or maybe it was a couple nights ago. There's been football for like 8 nights in a row. But
I know, I was going to say, how rare.
I essentially said, I can't explain why the Vikings are this average, but they have talent. They have one of the best complete rosters in the NFL. And everybody's like, well, it's because their passing game's bad. I'm like, no, you're missing what I'm asking. Why? I understand what's missing.
Well, it's just like the Chargers, which is that Zimmer was the defensive guy. How is your team so bad every year? Every year they seem to have 7 or 8 games where they're giving up 35 points. And they give them up. They give them up at crucial times. That's their thing. Yeah. Like they blow a lot of games.
If you need to beat Minnesota, you can. It's so frustrating.
The best way to beat Minnesota is to wait for them to give you the chance to beat them.
Think about Pittsburgh played a terrible game and had the ball and a tying touchdown in the guy's hands. It's this team, and then I watch them. I'm like, there's talent everywhere. Cousins is fine. But here's you know what
Yeah.
though, they're
Yeah.
7-7, and I think they're a 7-7 team. Like I'm not
Yeah.
shocked that they're 7-7. Here's the thing
Yeah.
about the NFL: nobody can go 500 this year, so I really like that nobody can go
Right.
500. So, but yeah, Green Bay, ran away with the division. They're by far the best team,
Well, yeah,
and
and but you said it. Nobody can go 500, and like I said, that coaching purgatory, which is the difference between 8-9 and 9-8 this year, might be getting fired.
it's gonna
So
look giant.
yeah, 9-8 might get Zimmer another year, and sorry, Vikings fans, that would be less than ideal for you, I think.
Yeah, I think Fisher is a good comparison too. So
Yeah.
we'll move on to the NFC South. Now this one's decided. Also, Tampa Bay is going to win this division, even though they just played one of the worst games of the season against the Saints the other night. It's inexplicable how they can lose to the Saints like they do. Like I say, their injuries are starting to take its toll on Tampa Bay. They're going to win this division, but I think they're going to limp into the playoffs. They just added Le'Veon Bell, which is useless. The guy cannot play running back. I don't think he wants to play running back.
I agree.
And he believe me, when he got signed to the Ravens, my wife's like, "Oh, this is awful." And he couldn't stay on the Ravens, and the Ravens have no players, and he couldn't stay on the Ravens. And they're a favorable running team.
He couldn't beat out Devontae Freeman, who most people thought was just completely out of the league now. But no,
absolutely useless signing. There's no effect whatsoever.
Yeah,
the receivers are up and down. They're dinged up. They're good. I know that Tampa Bay is really good.
Well, no Godwin though. I mean, the Godwin
huge.
Injury,
I feel terrible. I really like that guy. Too.
Yeah,
one of my favorite players.
And that's sort of the thing, right? Coming into the year with Tampa Bay, same last year when they won the Super Bowl, this is the most stacked offensive skill position group. And then at this point of the year, the way a season unfolds, you're right.
Yep.
They've got serious issues with Antonio Brown that stem beyond the football field. Godwin's out for the year. Gronk is still Gronk about half the time, and then the other half of the time now he just looks like he is stumbling around out there. And then all you've got really is Mike Evans and maybe Scotty Miller. But
Mike Evans is touch and go with injuries too.
He's a bit of a ghost at times this year too. And then if Fournette's hurt, you're stuck with Ronald Jones. The roster looks very different. Like you say, when the healthiest teams are the ones who usually get the best chance to win the Super Bowl, and it's really hard to every team that plays in the Super Bowl the year before always has a bit of an attrition issue the next year where they really just have a hard time staying healthy. And it looks like that just might be like you said, they might limp into the playoffs, get a home game, but if they get someone like San Francisco in the first round, that's going to be a really tough matchup if they're not fully healthy.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm glad you said San Francisco. Let's get into what preseason looked like the best division in football. I think it proved to be not as good as we thought because Seattle took a step back, but they're still a really good bad team. Like that's not a team that you want to play on any week, and they're the bad team. Arizona's trending down, but they're still a good team, and they had some really good weeks. The Rams are playing good football right now. San Francisco's playing awesome football for the last 2 months, really. I love the NFC West. This is a tough one. I'll go first. I think I think the Rams win the NFC West. I think the Cardinals are, again, Kyler Murray. It's just, I'm not calling him out or anything. I'm just simply saying when he starts getting dinged up, it's a different team, and I've always said they put such a load on him, and the extra hits, the extra running around. He looks a little worn down again this year, late in the season. Hopkins is out till I think they're talking maybe NFC Championship game time now. Like he's out. That's huge, and it's just a team it's a little banged up at a lot of positions, and attrition kind of took its toll on them. But they padded their wins early, so they're going to get into the playoffs. That's awesome. Right. I don't think they can win this division now. I think the Rams. Last time we talked, the Rams were in the middle of their. Right. It was a rough stretch, like to where we were like, "What's going wrong?" Everybody's like, "We should," they'd be the same with golf and all that, which I do have a great question about that here in a minute.
All right,
but. I think the Rams have kind of figured it out. They look really physical right now. A couple of weeks ago, they played a game to where Aaron Donald looked like the best player in the league again. I like where they're at. They're going to win. I think they're going to win this division. I think 49ers are. I think all three teams are going to make the playoffs. Which again, I said at the beginning of the season, I'm kind of sticking with it. They're pretty good. I mean, Arizona could miss the playoffs in the NFC. We'll look at the wild card picture here in a minute. I don't think they will. But I'm picking the Rams, man. I'm just gonna tell you straightforward. So, NFC West, your division. You tell me. Tell me about the NFC West.
Well, putting aside my really noticeable bias and the flag behind my shoulder here, but I do actually think the Rams are going to win the division as well because of just what a downwards trend Arizona's in. This is not to sound like some guy coming up with the next meme, but late season Kyler is kind of becoming a thing after 2 or 3 years in a row. You're right. He really has a hard time making it all the way to the end of the season healthy. And the way he plays the game at his size and his mobility, his eyes start to focus a little bit more on what's directly in front of him when he starts to get banged up and pressured more. And it seems to be the case again this year. I mean, losing Hopkins is killer. They have no chance to go anywhere without him. Really, AJ Green as the number one receiver is not a good look for them. And he has not made a great effort at times for Arizona this year, and it's cost them. I think they're just, football's a trendy game, and I think that they're headed in a direction that they're going to be a tough play for anybody, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Arizona, after being kind of like the Steelers last year, start really, really, really good and look really, really good, but, trend downwards for the second half and go out in the first round. Certainly possible. San Francisco, I don't think can win the division just because it might be too big of a hill to climb.
Yeah.
Rams and Niners play week 18, which you'd like to think could decide the division, but it's still a 2-game lead. If the Rams win, one more game, they might be 2 up with 2 to go. And that just might be too tough of a climb for San Francisco. But I would hate to have to play San Fran in the first round.
Nobody wants to play San Francisco.
I want no business, just like the Colts. I want nothing to do with them in the first round. And whoever gets them, even the Rams, that's not an exciting prospect for anybody because they look really good. And even, dare I say, if they really hit their stride, championship worthy. I mean, they might.
We'll get into that here in a second.
I'm setting you up for the next one, Jeff. So.
Yeah, good call. I think the Rams are fine. They're better than they would have been. If they kept golf. They've had a pretty tough schedule. They did lose a couple stinkers, but they won some really good games too. Like we can't forget that they've won some good games. And
they beat Arizona with they had to replace Jalen Ramsey with a guy who had never played a down in the NFL, who was literally falling down for part of the game, and they still managed to pull it off. And also, I sort of recant my frustration with them earlier in the year when they picked up Miller and OBJ and said, you can't just buy a championship, blah, 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 blah. I should have used my brain and known that in football, like unlike other sports, it takes time for guys to settle in, and both of them have settled in. Both of them are making plays. Most of them are fitting into their roles really well and are playing. They're both trending upwards in a direction as well. So it seems to be, it's just a matter now of whether or not Sean McVay can have an identity, because, like you said, they played a couple of great games where they dominated up front, and it was a completely different sort of look for an offense for the Rams. And then just last night, they seemed to go right back to what was not working before and try to run that offense against Seattle. And lo and behold, it was a tough game for them to get anything going. So if they can find that physical running game identity again, especially if they get matched up with the Niners in the playoffs and even in the weekend 18 game, I mean, I think that's the only way they're going to actually be a competitive team through the playoffs, is if they can find that identity. Also, Sony Michel clearly has become the number one running back there.
And something I'll say about the Rams too, and this does matter. At their best, they're really good. Like if every team plays their best, the Rams can still do it. They've got a high ceiling, which is what I like. Just like we talked about the Chiefs, when the Chiefs play their best, they're really really good. As to where some of the Titans' best is good, but I don't know if right now it's as high as the Chiefs or the Cowboys, or whatever. Right. But
Packers
you have to be able to do that first for it to matter. The NFC is going to be really interesting, because the bottom line is, a bunch of warm weather teams are going to have to. Somebody's going to have to go through Green Bay.
That's the Green Bay. The Green Bay getting number one. I mean, the Rams Packers game. I think looking back is probably going to be the biggest game of the year in the NFC, because it may come down to the end that the Packers beating the Rams in that game when they were in that slump. It may have been maybe the difference between the NFC Championship game going through Wisconsin or going through beautiful sunny Los Angeles. Huge difference.
I've said that all year too. Like everybody asked me, like, why isn't Green Bay number one in your rankings? I said, as soon as they get home field, and now they're in line for home field, I will give them the number one seed, because that's a real home field advantage. Most teams, I don't care. That's brutal. Like you the Rams got away with a decent one there last year, and and still took a tough loss. But but the weather was not bad. You're lucky to get that if you go to Green Bay, that it's not just brutal. And that's a real factor. So we'll lead that in. We talked about division winners. We'll start talking about some wild card teams here, and I'll get your thoughts on that. So we talked about the Chiefs, Patriots, Titans, Bengals. Colts are the 5th seed right now. I think we both think the Colts are going to make it in, even though nothing by no means is it guaranteed.
Right.
By no means is it guaranteed. Then you got the Chargers hanging around at the 6th seed right now, and then you got the Bills at the 7th seed. Some combination of Colts, Chargers, Bills. 2 of those teams are getting in, I think. The Ravens were the number 1 seed 2 weeks ago. They're on the bubble now at 8. So we'll look at in the AFC. We're going to look at you got the Ravens at 8. You got Steelers at 9. You got Raiders at 10, and you got Miami at 11. But Miami is deceiving because if they win out, they steal a bunch of tiebreakers. So all these teams are 7-7. The Browns are the 12th at 7-7. Go clear down to the Broncos 13 at 7-7. Like your 13th.
It's an amazing conference.
In the AFC is 7-7. So I just got to ask you, man. We won't dig too much into schedule and tiebreakers and all that.
Yeah.
Who's getting the wild card spots in the AFC?
Well, I'm still betting on the Colts, first of all, and therefore also out of the 2 of them, the Titans or the Colts, I think they'll both make it.
They're both
barring some sort of collapse. I think both those AFC South teams will go. I'm amazed at how many potential scenarios there are because I still think maybe there's going to be one team who won't make it, who will be a real serious disappointment. Possibly the Chargers, the way their defense has been playing. Possibly the Bills, because if they take a loss to New England, they're on the outside looking in with 2 to go. So I think the Ravens are just out of gas. I think it's if they don't win the division,
they're a good team that I think is going to miss the playoffs, and it's just one of those years.
And you're right, by the way. Well, first of all, again, Rad, they've been so badly injured all year that the attrition of a 17-game season is catching up to them. But also, what you said earlier, I think they've missed their chance. I think the fact that they could have at least won one of those games, at least a Steelers game that was kind of an ugly game where they were in control, they've missed the opportunity because, one of those turns into a win. We're not worried about it. They're in the driver's seat of the division and all that, and they'd be fine. But we'll find out. It looks like the AFC North, most of those teams are going to miss. Whoever wins the division is in, and then maybe everybody else is out. I don't like the Raiders, the Broncos. I don't like the Browns. None of them have anything to offer, really. The Dolphins, again, trends matter, and I think they're trending upwards. So I think the Dolphins might make a push and maybe be the team that knocks the Bills out.
The Dolphins get to play Tennessee and New England. I mean, they got a tough schedule coming up, but they also got huge wins coming up. Yeah,
they're in control of their own sort of schedule there. I would have to say I'd still bet the Bills to make the playoffs. I think they have too much talent to miss the playoffs. It could be my famous last words, but the Chargers. I have to believe that good quarterback play from Herbert will eventually prevail. So I like the way it looks right now. Maybe the Dolphins eke one of these teams out. But other than that, you're right. I think the Ravens without Lamar are just a team trying to make whatever they can work.
I think it's just too much. I personally just think it's just too much with all the injuries. All right, so we'll switch to the NFC. The NFC is interesting too. There's not as many teams, but there's some really good teams. We talked about it. Green Bay's in, Cowboys in, Buccaneers in. Now we get down to, as of now, the 4th seed is the Cardinals, which we just talked about the NFC West. We don't think that's going to hold up. Rams are at 5, but they both have 10 wins. So it'd be really. I think both these teams make the playoffs just because they have a 2-game lead. I'd be shocked if. But 49ers could run. So we got 49ers at the 6th seed. I think the 49ers make it just because they're playing really good football right now, and they've got a 1-game lead on the Vikings as of right now. We talked all that shit about the Vikings. They're in the playoffs if the season ends tomorrow, which is the worst.
I would love for the Vikings to make the playoffs as the last seed in the Rams, because if the Rams take the division, I believe they move up to 2nd behind Green Bay since that tiebreaker. I would love for them to draw the Vikings in the playoffs in the first round. Okay. So I hope Minnesota makes it if that's the outcome. But
Careful what you wish for, man.
I know.
Every time a
Who
team
knows?
thinks that, I don't want to play. I'm telling you right now, I don't want to play Justin Jefferson in any facet. Like that guy's a game changer. So you got the Vikings at 7. Now the bubble is wild in the NFC. You got the Eagles. Eagles are 8. They're on the bubble with 7-7. You got the Saints at 9 at 7-7. Then you got the Washington football team at 6-8, and you got the Falcons at 6-8. Now they're a stretch, just because they have to basically win 2 more games to get in. I don't think much of them. You got the Saints get to play the Dolphins this week. Dolphins have a really tough schedule down the stretch. I think it's gonna catch up to them. That's why you don't hear me ranting and raving. But I'm happy for what they've done. I think that the playoffs, I actually think, and I don't know. Now that I look at it, I have no idea who's going to grab that 7 seed.
I'd be putting my money on the Eagles.
The Vikings have the Rams this week. I think the Eagles are going to make the playoffs.
So do I. And I think the fact that the Eagles are playing 3 division games to close out the year. The Cowboys game is going to be tough, but hey, division games are always weird.
They're weird.
They're very weird. I mean, the Eagles winning all 3 of their last games. They got the Giants this week, then they go Washington and then Dallas, I think. So, I mean, Washington and the Giants, those are a couple of, weak teams.
The Eagles should win 9 games.
They should win at least 9 games. And you're right. I think the Vikings playing the Rams this week is going to knock them down, put them at 7-8. And I just think the Eagles might run away with it. The Saints are so weird because I don't know how you can ever put your money on a team that doesn't have a quarterback.
They can't. I don't understand what happened the other night with the Saints.
I don't know either.
It was some weird universe. None of it makes sense.
That's why I don't gamble on this sport at all. This is why I don't put money down on these games.
I think the Eagles make it. Everything else, we just talked about it. I have no idea what's going to happen with the 40. I love this NFC West. The Cardinals, honestly, I don't care if they miss the playoffs. I've seen enough of them. They had their shot and they're fading. I need the 49ers in the playoffs. I love this team. I just love the way they play. I've just latched onto them. Deebo Samuel is my, if I was a 12-year-old, that would be the jersey I'd be asking for Christmas. I've loved him since he was a rookie. And it's not because of the gimmick thing. He's just such a good football player. I really enjoy watching.
You know what? I hate that. I hate that idea of it being a gimmick thing about him. He is a talented person. The idea that he gets used as a running back being like a detriment to who he is as a player.
It drives me insane.
Also, if you watched any of this guy at South Carolina, he was used as a gadget player there too. He's just everything,
great football player. This is modern football. I think this is the future of football. We're seeing it. I mean,
basketball, Jeff. It's positionless stuff. It's like the Rams use Cooper Kupp. They put him in the backfield. They make.
Okay, I'm about to go on Cooper Kupp ramp. I'm glad you let me into this.
Please.
Okay, he's having one of the greatest seasons in NFL history. It's just the way it is.
Yep.
And here's my thing. Everybody is already arguing about Jonathan Taylor over a quarterback for the MVP. If you're going to tell me Jonathan Taylor is the MVP of the league, then Cooper Kupp is the MVP of the league.
Preach, Jeff. Preach.
He's blowing statistics out of the water. He's having one of the best seasons we ever seen from a wide receiver for a playoff team that we've seen in a long time. This guy's doing everything. He makes the other receivers on the field better. Not only that, he's doing great. So if you're good, if the only non-quarterback anybody's throwing at us is Taylor, I'm like, whoa. Then Kupp should be in the conversation too, because he's got more yards and all that stuff.
He has an opportunity to break Calvin Johnson's record. Yes, I know he is playing an extra game this year, but there's an outside chance that we might see the first ever 2,000-yard receiver this year. An extra game or not, an extra game is not, one game out of a season like that, where most league leaders in receiving yards are usually maybe 1,500. For a guy to get 2,000 would be unbelievable.
We're talking in modern football, though, with other receivers on the field. Like when you talk about a running back, what Taylor's doing is awesome. I'm not trying to dismiss it, but I'm saying is he's the running back. There's not 5 running backs, and then you're splitting it up. Like Taylor's getting the ball. Cup
Well,
is
in
doing
terms
all
of the
this.
NFC,
Cup is doing all this in a modern NFL offense with other receivers.
yeah, and he's also pretty clearly the guy. He's been the
Yeah.
guy the whole year, and no defense has found an opportunity, any sort of way to stop this guy. Seattle was playing good defense last night, and he just finds himself open, repeatedly finds himself open.
He is just this guy that's found a way to, he's got the Wes Welker like technique of like finding the open hole, but he's athletic enough to run every route like that. So like he finds holes in the zone, but with Stafford's arm, which we've talked about this 100 times, this is why they went and got Stafford. He can find the holes in the zone. They might be 35, 40 yards downfield, and Stafford can still, use them. And that's been the difference. Like, you take what Kupp does, but he does it farther down the field. So like he just gets 20 and 25-yard chunks like left and right.
And the way they use him, they line him up everywhere. Everywhere. He plays slot, he plays out, he plays as sort of like a tight end, to help with chip blocking and run plays.
Yeah,
he plays out of the backfield. He blocks. He returns punts even.
Yeah.
He's an MVP candidate receiver returning punts, which you'd think would never happen. So he's I think people have a hard time wrapping their heads around a guy who looks like him, who plays like him, being the best receiver in football. But this year, he is by far the best receiver in football. Overall is a different argument, but right now, there's no one
he's had the best season. He has had the best
above and beyond everybody. A Triple Crown winner is an amazing feat, and he's pretty much, 3 games left. Another good game or two in the next couple of weeks, he's pretty much got it locked.
Yeah,
barring some 5 touchdown performance by somebody, but we'll see. I always appreciate a Cup rant.
Yeah, it just kills me because it's Taylor and then quarterbacks. And I'm like, whoa.
Let me ask you this. Okay, if the MVP is typically best quarterback award, right? Then who right now is the best quarterback in the league over the course of the spectrum of the whole year? Kyler Murray's fallen off a cliff and was hurt for 4 weeks. Brady's starting to look a little iffy, especially with his roster being shaken up a little bit. Stafford's been up or down. Who else do you have really right now? Aaron Rodgers is maybe the default you're going to go with.
I think Rodgers is the default. And Andy's, like you say, he's still playing good. Like I think Stafford's done great. I think if you take out those, there was that stretch though. I mean, it happened. Like I don't know what to tell. Like sorry, Matt. Like I saw it. Like you had a bad stretch there. You know what? Honestly, it's skewed because of the workload. But Josh Allen's having a really, really good year right now, considering he is the entire offense. So I would honestly, the truth is he's probably the most important player of any team. Of any player. Well, I guess Aaron Rodgers is the most important, but Josh Allen, what he does for his team is irreplaceable, but that's his team's fault. That's not his fault, but he's playing really well. But that's my point is like nobody is like putting these record numbers up that you can't deny. Like, Brady through like week 10 looked like he was going to do it. And then, he's come back to the pack a little bit, that's if this was the year, but the fact of the matter is Aaron Rodgers is probably going to get it. That's just the way it is. They're going to be like wins.
They'll default to him. Yeah.
And it's not that he's been, I mean, he's that. And here's the thing though. Everybody would say, well, yeah, but you would take Aaron Rodgers over any position player. Like that's just the truth. Like, because that's how important the quarterback position is.
But I got to tell you, I don't think the Rams are anywhere near 10-4 without Cooper Kupp. We lost Robert Woods, and that was a tough loss. And we're lucky that we got OBJ in to replace him, which luck of the draw, really, that they signed him, and then Robert Woods tears his ACL. But if it had been Cooper Kupp who went down, I think 10-4 would be 8-6. Maybe like I don't think the Rams were anywhere near the same team without Cooper Kupp as another team is. And I know a quarterback is irreplaceable too. I don't disagree with that.
And that's the problem with the award is like, if you're going to do that, then like, okay, well then nobody could ever win it but a quarterback, because we understand that that's the most important position. But it's also not fair because there's only one of him. Like, it's there's honestly, like, if we could all go through the tape and everything, there's probably a freaking left guard that's the best player in the league that just because of the way that we view football, we don't know. Of
course.
I tell you what, honestly, I think another guy in the MVP as far as what he's done for his team. I think Myles Garrett has carried the Cleveland Browns this year. And I saw him limping around the other day. I got serious concerns. If he's hurt, if he's dinged up at all, I don't think the Browns have a chance. That guy has been an absolute force. Kind of remind me of, Donald, a couple, I don't know, pick one of the 6 seasons that Donald's been the best player in the league instead of just the almost best player in the league. But TJ Watt's had a really great season keeping,
let me, while it's in my head, take this opportunity to say what an unbelievably great year Robert Quinn has had for the Chicago Bears. And nobody has even noticed this guy. He's playing as good as he did when he was in his peak with the Rams all those years ago. And it's just, nobody's even noticed he's got 16 sacks this year. Shout out to Robert Quinn. Good to see him. I'm glad to see him still productive.
I believe he's I think he's close to setting some all-time records for the Bears too. I think I heard him say the other day. And that's that organization's had some good players funneled through there, to say the least.
Absolutely.
Shout out to Robert Quinn. You know what? That's what when I originally started my podcast, it was guys like Robert Quinn and Cooper Kupp that I'm like, this is what it's based on. Is it's not who they want to tout on SportsCenter. Not that Kupp hasn't got. I mean, I think everybody recognizes Kupp's had a great season, but it's just, I just wanted to shout out that, like, how great of a season he has. So the last thing we're saying on wild cards, I need you to pick, one of these wild card teams that can actually win the Super Bowl.
It pains me to say it, but I'll say it because it's true. San Francisco. I mean, this team that's only 2 years out from being, pretty much in the position to win a Super Bowl, although they blew it. Yeah. But I mean, they've been there before. This is mostly the same roster, minus a few pieces here and there. They play the same formula that they did then. Be more physical than most of these sort of spread teams. I would hate for the Rams to play them in the playoffs because I don't think we could beat them. The Niners play classic winning football, good defense, good running game. Don't ask much of your quarterback. And Deebo Samuel, unlike, a few years ago, he's changed their offense and given them like a modern identity, sort of in a hybrid sense with their power running game. They run the ball really well, but he is the guy that they use to stretch the field. So as long as he's healthy, I think, and as long as Garoppolo is, not trying to do too much, it's
all health.
Really don't want to play
health. If Kittle's healthy and Samuel's healthy and Garoppolo's healthy, which is a lot to ask for this team in 3 weeks. Let's be honest. Me and you will probably do a show in 3 weeks before the playoffs, and we'll be like, "Can you believe that all 3 of those guys got hurt in the first quarter?" That's how football's worked this year.
Well, they've got a healthy defense again, right? They missed last year. All those guys missed the whole season, right? They had an awful year defensive injuries wise. And they started slow this year, but they're settling in.
They're the Ravens. They're the Ravens of this year. I think I picked them to win the division, but as of right now, they stand at 5. I think the Colts can win the Super Bowl. Even considering like how they started the season, 49ers. I think, the Bills. I hate to call them a wild card team. They're having a terrible season. I really don't think the Bills can win the Super Bowl. I really just think there's something missing there. I think they can be beat by too many other teams. There's just something missing with the Bills.
I should say the Bills are like the Titans. The Bills are like the Titans in the sense that both those teams are in the playoffs the last few years, but as each year has gone by, they seemingly have not evolved into something different at all. They seem to be coming back with the same formula, the same strategy, the same sort of approach to their games. And you think, hasn't been working these years past, to come back again and try it again. I don't think they really have it. And the Colts, I mean, the Colts are going to go to the playoffs and teams are basically going to go, all right, how about somebody who isn't Jonathan Taylor tries to win this football game? And that's going to be on Carson Wentz and Michael Pittman. And I don't know.
And again, I need to see Taylor finish the season healthy before I decide anything on the Colts.
Especially a 17-game season too. I mean, that's a lot of work for these
3 more games. You're going to try and get 160 yards a game out of him. 3 more games. All right. One last quick question.
Yeah.
Out of all these teams we talked about, we're up to probably almost 20 teams that can make the playoffs on both sides of it. Who's the most surprising team that you think can actually win the Super Bowl, like in any small percentage? Like if you saw them win it, you would go, I think they can, but I would also be like blown away by it.
Probably a cop-out answer, I guess, but I actually firmly believe it. I would not be surprised to watch New England win the Super Bowl. I mean,
I hadn't even thought about that.
I know. I know they really snuck up on us this year completely, but how you bet against this coach. I mean, Belichick just how does he do it, Jeff?
I have
Took
no
him a
idea.
year. He basically ran Cam Newton out there for a season and just
Well,
held over. Still
and
won
I
7
think
games
that's the
last year.
I think that's the secret. He doesn't get dug in with like forcing square pegs into round holes.
Yes.
He drafted the quarterback. Quarterback was like, oh, he can run the system. See you, Cam. Like he didn't
Yeah.
like Cam hang around. There was no reason to have him there. Like every player's got a purpose on a Belichick team.
Yes.
So like you got a position, do your job and do it well, and we'll be fine. But I don't have a spot to like, that's why some of the guys have failed over the years that are so talented, like Ocho Cinco and stuff. They just didn't, they never fit in their job category. So it just never worked. He doesn't try to force them in. He'll just let them like, oh, that's my bad. That's my mistake. Like, so.
Yeah. There's a reason why he's got 6 Super Bowls. 6 Super Bowls and the greatest receiver he won any Super Bowls with. I know he had Randy Moss, but he didn't win a Super Bowl with him.
He didn't win a Super Bowl.
But the best receiver he had outside of Gronk was Julian Edelman, who's, kind of the Hall of very okay, pretty good kind of player. But like he does, you're right. He's a master of the toolbox. He knows he gets guys who are capable of individual skills, and then he knows how to use them to perfection. I mean, the defense especially is insanely impressive that he's put together a defense that good. He's gone back to his basics as a coach, is build with a really good defense and a quarterback who doesn't make mistakes.
I like Belichick. He builds from he's one of the few coaches that builds from the back up. He builds the secondary and then worries about the defensive line later. I mean, don't get me wrong. Udon is having a great season. His linebackers always play good.
Great player.
But you're exactly. But another thing, the NFL has had to go back to, zone defense like that. They play so much zone now because of these great quarterbacks, and you can't hit anybody and blah, blah, blah. And Belichick is awesome at the zone defense. He ran when he ran it against Buffalo, Allen and that wind had no chance because there's not enough room, for error. And when Belichick runs that zone defense, he'll give Mahomes trouble with it. But I think the rookie quarterback will hold him back eventually. Nothing against him. He's had a great rookie season. He's fine, but I think it'll eventually hold him back. I think the one team that would shock everybody, but also I would be like, yeah, I see it, because when they play their best, they're really good. That the Cincinnati Bengals win the division. They get a good home game. Somebody knocks off the Chiefs, whatever, in some weird freaky game, and they get a matchup with the Colts, or something like that, and everything works out. And then all of a sudden in Super Bowl, for whatever reason, let's say they've got, I don't know, some stupid thing. They got the Vikings or Cardinals. Sure. I can somehow see this weird alternate universe to where the Cincinnati Bengals win it with their talent on a turf field. And I'm like, what the hell just happened?
I think the Bengals are a coaching question to me. I'm not sure Zach Taylor is again, they're a very inconsistent team.
Some days I'm up and some days, but what I like about the Bengals, their defense is getting a little better every week, a little more aggressive and a little more, and that's what happens in the playoffs. These defenses get fired up and they take the ball away. They get a couple interceptions early, and I'm not saying they're going to do it, but I think honestly I have them, because of how everything will work out. I have them, I think I have them above the Bills probably as far as a chance to win the Super Bowl. I don't think there's going to be any team because here's the reason why. Only one team can come out of the NFC. That's the thing. Right. The NFC is better top to bottom. Only one team can come out. So you only have to beat one NFC team. And then you just got to and we've seen every AFC team get beat by bad teams. That's
why it's so even. Everybody in the AFC has has impressive wins and confusing losses. I mean, Tennessee, for example, after they beat the Rams, we thought, it's a team. Geez, like how great they're playing without Derrick Henry. Just imagine what they'll do. What do? They lose to the Jets. They lose to the Steelers. They've got a really confusing resume. The AFC is a bunch of confusing resumes.
Yep.
The NFC is got a lot of teams running away that are sort of falling back to earth towards the end of the year. So. And it might be an attrition thing.
We saw Cincinnati take Green Bay to, basically field goal kick competition. So like we've seen them play against a good team, and that was a different Cincinnati team. I'm not picking them. I'm just saying I would not be. I wouldn't be scared to put a tad bit of money on Cincinnati winning the Super Bowl.
I'm really interested in seeing the sort of the first round of the playoffs in the AFC. I think
it's really going to be the matchups before we. Yeah, you're exactly right.
And the way that everything finishes, because they're so tight right now. I mean, again, everyone's within a game of each other with 3 games left. The home away flips that we're going to see at the end of the year with these games getting worked out. Teams that would have been 4th and now they're 6th or 3rd and now they're 4th or 5th. Like, it's where they get positioned at the end of the game at the end of the year here in this final 3 weeks is going to set up very different scenarios in a very even conference.
And here's what we know: it's going to be the best week. It's going to be the best.
Always
week
is.
Be the best week 18 we've ever seen because it's the first. It's going to be pretty wild. It's going to be fun to watch. The red zone week 18 is going to be a sight to behold. So
basically
many
playoffs.
And I like how
now,
and I like how now the NFL, another smart thing they did, they shift the time so teams can't watch other teams play and all these things. So it is going to be an absolute shootout at the end of the season. So, hey man, this has been a blast again. We covered a lot of stuff, but I feel like it's really productive. Again, of course, tell everybody where they can find Sorted Goods and Fucking A podcast.
Yeah. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Disinformed Dan is the handle. You should listen to the Sorted Goods podcast. Every episode is just me kind of picking something from the world and sort of doing a little extra research and diving into it, interesting news and history and all sorts of stuff. It's just my brain spilling out into an audio format and making it interesting for you. And my other podcast is the Fucking A podcast. That's FUCKINEH. That's Canadians up here. Just a comedy podcast, just the classic 2 guys having a conversation. It's me and my longtime best friend and former college roommate, my buddy Matt. We just talk about the world and all that. So if you're looking for something to keep you entertained, there's 2 options depending on which kind of brain you have. So check those out on any podcasting app that you have, and hopefully you'll stop by. But Jeff, this is so much fun. I love doing this. I can't wait to come back for the playoff episode.
Yeah, we will definitely do a playoff episode. Again, Dan, thanks for coming on. You're always prepared. You always bring great knowledge. We have great conversation. We love your rants. I always like us. I reset now, and then we'll watch the last 3 weeks. And we'll figure it out, and then we'll set something up.
I prepare to be very, very wrong about a lot of things, Jeff, as always.
Of course. So, hey, everybody out there, enjoy the holiday season. Don't make it too stressful. Take some time to yourself. Be healthy. Just be nice. Have a good time. A few drinks, whatever it is that you like to do. Just try to enjoy the holiday season and not get too overworked by it. Because that's not what it's about. So I want to thank Dan for coming on. Check out Jeff Needs Sports anywhere you listen to the podcast. Check out Off the Ball Network for all the other guys' stuff. And again, happy holidays, Dan. You have a great holiday season, man, and we'll see you all soon.
Take care, everybody.